Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, hello and welcome. My name is Becca. I'm a registered dietitian and I make lots of nutrition and health as well as lifestyle videos here on my channel. But in today's video, I'm going to be talking all about coconut oil. So there has been some major buzz about coconut oil the past few weeks in the media. So in this video, I'm going to be doing my best to break it down for you. I've done a lot of research, I've sifted through a lot of different articles, and just from a evidence-based standpoint, I want to give you guys basically just the breakdown as best as I can so you can better understand this complex issue and also understand whether or not you should personally be eating coconut oil. So all of this buzz pretty much stemmed from the American Heart Association released their presidential advisory a few weeks back on the consumption of saturated fat and risk for CVD or cardiovascular disease. So from this release, there was this huge buzz about coconut oil, a lot of claims being thrown around, and to be honest, I think it got way blown out of proportion, because if you actually look at the article or whatever you want to call it they released, there's only a tiny little blurb on coconut oil. It's 17 pages long and there's like a paragraph or two on coconut oil itself. So this big document was all about dietary saturated fat, coconut oil being a small part of that, but for some reason it got completely blown up in the media and became all about coconut oil. I will have it linked down below if you want to go read it for yourself, but I did want to point out and mention that in this advisory that was just put out, this wasn't any like new findings or new studies. This wasn't like new information we happened upon and that's why there was this big buzz. It really was just a bunch of doctors sat down and looked at all of the current research and then made their best recommendations based on the current body of research. This was not something brand new that came out. This was just them forming an opinion on the research that is already existing. So it wasn't a new study, it wasn't this new groundbreaking finding. It was just, like I said, an opinion based on the existing body of research. Before we jump to whether or not you should be eating coconut oil, let's go ahead and just state the facts and what we know about coconut oil. So coconut oil is actually very high in saturated fat. It's around 80% saturated fat, which is actually more than butter. And of that 80 or so percent, about 50 up to 50% of it is lauric acid, which is actually a medium chain triglyceride or an MCT. So the fancy thing about MCTs is they are actually absorbed differently in the body compared to other triglycerides. So for example, a triglyceride with long chain fatty acids. So the typical way that fat gets absorbed in the body is in the intestine. So we have, we just ate a meal and we've got some fat down in our intestine. Let's say this has it's a triglyceride with long chain fatty acids. It will actually get bundled into what is called a micelle so that it's water soluble and can pass through the cell wall of our intestines and therefore go on into the rest of the body. But what it does is it doesn't just go straight into the blood like any other nutrient would. It actually first goes into our lymph system. So these micelles will go through our intestinal wall, they get repackaged as what's called chylomicrons, and then these chylomicrons will then go on into the lymph system and travel all throughout the body. So as they're traveling all throughout the body, these chylomicrons are actually going to be like depositing or dropping off fatty acids or cholesterol into our tissues. So it basically just is a way for us to take fat from our diet, transport it around the body, and then take these fatty acids to our tissues where they are typically stored or could also be used for energy depending on the situation that your body is currently in. But MCTs are unique because instead of going through that whole micelle, chylomicron, through the lymph to the tissues, they actually just get absorbed right into the blood through the portal vein. So they skip all of that, they don't go around to the tissues, and they go into the portal vein and head straight to the liver where they're then converted and used as energy or just converted into other metabolites. So basically, long story short, these MCTs or medium chain triglycerides do not get stored as fat in the tissues, they actually just get burned up and used for energy. So where coconut oil comes into play is up to 50% of the saturated fat in it is lauric acid, meaning it's an MCT, so you can kind of make that logical leap of, okay, well, if it's all mainly medium chain triglycerides, a lot of the fat that you're getting from coconut oil is not actually being stored, it is going to be used for energy. So I think this is where that superfood claim comes in. Spoiler alert, coconut oil is not a superfood, it is just a food. It doesn't have any superpowers, it doesn't have any crazy fat burning powers that all these, of course the fat that you're consuming is going to get converted to energy, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to start burning up all the fat in your body that is already stored. So, there's a lot of half-truths when it comes to the claims and the ideas that get pushed in the health and wellness industry. A lot of the times they do have some kind of truth in science, but it's not the whole truth. And so there is no magic pill, there is no magic diet or anything. We all know at the end of the day, there's no magic trick when it comes to getting in shape or being healthy. It's all about just eating well and being active and doing that consistently. That is the magic equation. There is no magic pill you can take. There is no magical superfood that is going to make you drop all this weight. So common sense, people. So aside from coconut oil's fat composition and the MCTs and the potential superfood claims there is also research to back up that consuming coconut oil can raise your HDL levels, which is your good cholesterol, but it also can raise your LDL cholesterol, which is your bad cholesterol, meaning that it's potentially neutral and doesn't have any effect on heart health. However, there are a lot of research that a good amount of research that's been done on coconut oil, and it's very, very conflicting. Some studies say that it has no effect, potentially even a protective effect on our heart health, cardiac health. While other studies say that it has a negative effect, and we shouldn't be treating it as this heart healthy or heart neutral option. So I'm actually going to leave a couple studies linked down below you can check out, which kind of definitely shows that there are definitely two sides to this story. And just to give you a real quick description, if you're not familiar with LDL and HDL, that bad and good cholesterol, basically in a nutshell, LDL acts just like the chylomicrons that I described. It goes around the tissues and it drops off or deposits, fatty acids to our tissues. However, HDL does the exact opposite. It will go around to our tissues and actually collect or pick up these fatty acids and then move them back to our liver, where they can then be converted into energy, most likely. So it kind of does the reverse effect, and it ends up taking out cholesterol or fatty acids from our tissues and potentially in the arteries and the linings of our heart, and it takes it back to the liver where it's no longer dangerous, if that makes sense. So based on current research, as it stands now, July 2017 is when this video will be published, and of course it can always change in the future because nutrition is a science and it's always evolving. But right now the research on whether or not coconut oil is okay or healthy or protective or whatever for heart health is still very conflicting, and we just don't know. Now there is kind of this whole other facet to understanding the complexity of the situation that is super important to mention, and that is the recent pushback against saturated fat and whether or not it is actually as bad as we've always believed it to be, and what we've been basing our major nutritional recommendations or guidelines off of. So what the current nutritional guidelines or recommendations are based off of, to put it in the simplest way possible, is decrease saturated fat in the diet and increase unsaturated fats, specifically mono and especially polyunsaturated fats. And that will give you the best chance to decrease your risk of heart disease, among other factors, of course. But interestingly, a few years ago, a big meta-analysis came out. I believe it was in 2014. I will link this down below as well so you can look at it for yourself if you're curious. But basically this meta-analysis called into question whether or not saturated fat was actually as harmful as we have always believed it to be based on research that we've done previously. And this kind of rocked the world of nutrition a little bit. It really made headlines because it, like I said, it called into question everything that we based our nutritional recommendations on. Now, I do want to say that there also were some corrections that were made to this meta-analysis after it was published. I will also leave a link to an article down below discussing these corrections and the implications it has for what you can extrapolate data-wise and recommendation-wise from this meta-analysis. So basically it just questioned whether or not decreasing or consuming low saturated fat in the diet actually does decrease your risk for heart disease. Now, does this mean we should go crazy and eat all the saturated fat we want? No, I mean there's still a lot of research that's against that. But it definitely, causes us to question what we previously thought and recommended, and kind of brings us to this point that maybe we don't really know as much as we thought we did. And like I said, there were definitely some corrections to this study that kind of changed the outcome of the meta-analysis, but it still was a solid enough amount of information to make us at least question, you know, what we've always kind of thought. One thing I do want to mention about meta-analyses really quickly is they are great because we look at a ton of studies at once and can really look at a big body of research and then draw conclusions from that. However, since you're looking at a ton of studies at once, you're not looking at them in detail, and a lot of the little limitations and drawbacks and maybe issues of studies will all totally get lost. So it is important to remember that while meta-analyses are great for giving us good ideas of assumptions we can make based on a lot of research, they're certainly not perfect, and they're not always the truest view of what these studies actually were finding. So the research is kind of mixed on whether or not coconut oil is good for our heart health, but there's also maybe a little bit of mixed research now on whether saturated fat is actually as bad as we thought it was. So all of that being taken into consideration, it's definitely a complex issue, and it is so not straightforward, and like nothing is in nutrition, let's be honest. Bottom line is coconut oil is not a superfood. It is just another food or fat option that is available to us. It is high in saturated fat. The research is mixed on whether or not it is actually, you know, safe for our heart health or potentially detrimental. So at this point in time, you just want to use it in moderation. You've probably seen me use it on my channel. You know, a couple days a week I might put a little tiny bit, maybe a teaspoon, half a teaspoon in my coffee, or I might use it in a healthy dessert, but you're never going to see me slathering coconut oil on everything that I consume because it's a superfood. No, not even close. So you want to make sure to use it in moderation because we just don't know. And if you are not even a fan of coconut oil, just don't eat it. I mean, at this point we don't know, it could potentially be bad, so you shouldn't be eating it just because, you know, health and wellness, you know, bloggers or influencers are eating it. If you like it, go ahead and have it in moderation, but if you don't like it, you can probably just leave it out of your diet. And if you are going to eat it, you want to make sure that you're buying unrefined coconut oil. It's not going to be going through or subjected to a lot of processing, and therefore a lot of the antioxidants that are naturally occurring in coconut oil, which is a good thing, good for our heart health, will still be intact. So if you're buying the refined, you're going to lose out on a lot of that antioxidant power, and therefore it just loses, you know, some of the benefits that it does have. I hope that this video was helpful to you guys to just clear up a lot of the confusion and just really break it down so you can decide whether or not you should be consuming coconut oil. And also remember, if you're curious, I linked a bunch of different articles and things like that down below, so definitely go check that out if you're curious. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to follow me on Instagram and Snapchat so you can follow me on a daily basis. And of course, please subscribe to my channel because it means so much to me, and I would love for you to just be in the loop every time I put up a new video. But that is all I have for today. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye!
I'm not just a pretty girl.